I've trained 99% of my life alone. No one had me on the back. I did all of the work alone. You by yourself. Very few people want to be alone anymore. They want to be around noise and people, and you can't think. Spend time with yourself. And once you find that passion and that purpose, your goals, your purpose, everything will just start lining up.
This is the truth about the lone wolf mentality and why the world's most revolutionary minds chose exile over applause. Imagine this. You stand at the edge of a crowded room, laughter and conversation swirling around you like a storm. Faces blur into a single mass, smiling, nodding, performing. Yet despite the noise, the warmth, the illusion of connection, you feel it. The gnawing, unshakable solitude. Not loneliness, but something deeper, sharper. A quiet knowing that even here, surrounded by voices, you are utterly alone. And then, the question, the one that flickers in the darkest corners of your mind when the world falls silent. What if this aloneness is not your curse, but your greatest weapon? Consider the paradox. We are taught that success is a collective endeavor, networking, collaboration, the tribe. From childhood, we are conditioned to seek validation in the eyes of others, to measure our worth by the applause of the crowd. And yet, history's most transformative figures, artists, philosophers, inventors, warriors, were not forged in the comfort of consensus. They were sculpted by solitude. Think of Nietzsche wandering the Alps, whispering to the abyss. Of Emily Dickinson sealing her poems in drawers, unknown to the world. Of Tesla, hunched in his lab, electricity crackling between his fingers as the world dismissed him as a madman. They were outliers, not because they failed to belong, but because they chose not to. So why does the mere thought of true aloneness terrify us? Why do we cling to the noise, even when it drowns out our own voice? The answer lies in a lie we've been sold, one so pervasive we no longer see it, a lie that chains us to the mediocre, the predictable, the safe. But beneath it all, there's a truth, waiting, a truth that demands you ask yourself, what are you willing to lose? What illusions, what comforts, to gain something far greater? The silence is listening. What will you tell it? The fear of aloneness is not natural. It is manufactured. From the moment we take our first breath, we are conditioned to seek the herd. Parents soothe us with attention. Schools reward us for conformity, and society praises those who fit in. The message is clear: belong or be broken. But this is not wisdom. It is control, a silent, systemic leash designed to keep us from ever asking the most dangerous question. What if I don't need them? Psychology reveals our terror of solitude as a primal wound. Studies on social exclusion show that the brain processes rejection like physical pain, a survival mechanism from our tribal past. But here's the twist. We no longer live in tribes, yet the machinery of fear remains, hijacked by modern forces. Social media feeds on it, corporations exploit it, and governments weaponize it. The unspoken rule: stay dependent, stay afraid. Philosophy, however, whispers a darker truth. Kierkegaard warned of the crowd's untruth, the way masses dilute individuality into a faceless, thoughtless pulp. Nietzsche spat at the herd morality that punishes the exceptional for daring to stand apart. Even the Stoics, masters of self-mastery, preach the discipline of solitude, not as punishment, but as power. Yet the modern world has turned aloneness into a pathology. The loner is antisocial. The introvert is too quiet. The independent thinker is arrogant. These are not observations. They are accusations, tools to shame the solitary back into the fold. But the greatest lie of all? That connection is the opposite of loneliness. It isn't. Most people are more lonely in crowds than in silence, because crowds demand masks, and masks suffocate the soul. So ask yourself, when was the last time you heard your own voice? Unfiltered, unedited, unafraid? The answer may terrify you. The tragedy is not that we fear solitude. It's that we no longer recognize how it owns us. Every time you silence an idea to avoid ridicule, every time you mimic a laugh to blend in, every time you swallow your truth for the sake of harmony, you feed a machine that was never designed for your greatness. The cost? A slow, invisible erosion, the kind you only notice when it's too late. Cognitive science exposes the mechanics of this surrender. Social conformity bias rewires us to prefer popular wrongness over solitary truth. Mirror neurons addict us to mimicking emotions we don't feel. Even our dopamine systems are hijacked. Every like, every nod, every head turned in approval becomes a hit we crave. The result? A generation of brilliant minds conditioned to trade their genius for crumbs of validation. History's darkest chapters were not written by those who dared to stand alone, but by those who refused to. The Holocaust, the gulags, the witch trials. All powered not by evil individuals, but by ordinary people who feared exile more than dishonor. The lesson is clear. The crowd is not your protector, it's your jailer. Yet modern society has refined this prison into something far more insidious. Open offices that kill deep work, team-building exercises that punish introspection, a culture that pathologizes solitude as depression and medicates away the very state where genius stirs. The most dangerous consequence? You forget what you've lost. The child who once built imaginary worlds in quiet corners grows into an adult who can't sit with their own thoughts for 5 minutes. The artist who saw magic in shadows now stares at screens, starving for viral approval. Here's the unbearable question. What extinct version of yourself still whispers beneath the noise? The answer is written in the silence you've been running from. The moment you realize the crowd is a cage, that is your first breath of true freedom. But freedom is not given, it is seized. And the path to seizing it runs through the most forbidden territory of all. Voluntary exile, not from society, but from its grip on your mind. History's rebels mastered this art. Beethoven composed his greatest symphonies while deaf, literally deafening himself to the world's noise. J.D. Salinger retreated to a bunker, writing not for fame, but for the ghosts in his bones. Nikola Tesla spent years in isolation, conducting imaginary experiments in his mind before manifesting them into reality. These were not acts of withdrawal. They were strategic strikes against distraction. The rebellion begins with 3 heretical acts: the purge of false needs, every desire for validation, every flinch at disapproval, every craving for inclusion, interrogate it. Ask, is this mine or was it implanted? Then starve what does not serve you. The cultivation of sacred solitude. Not mere absence of people, but presence with yourself. Start with minutes, then hours of uninterrupted being. No screens, no books, no escape. Let the silence sharpen you until your own voice is the loudest in the room. The reclamation of time. The world will try to shatter your days into fragments. Meetings, notifications, obligations. Fight back. Carve unholy blocks of undisturbed focus where you create, think, or simply exist beyond the reach of others' agendas. This is not isolation, it is sovereignty. The masses will call you arrogant, strange, too intense. Let them. Their judgment is the proof you're winning. Now the critical choice. Will you keep begging for scraps of belonging? Or will you feast on the banquet of your own mind? The gate is open. Walk through. Here is the secret they never wanted you to know. Aloneness is not emptiness. It is the universe waiting to be filled by you alone. Every great idea, every revolution, every leap of human consciousness was born in the solitary mind. The crowd merely consumes what the lone wolf creates. The irony? The very society that shuns solitude is built upon the breakthroughs of those who dared to embrace it. This is the ultimate inversion of power. When you stop needing the world's permission, you become unstoppable. When you stop fearing its judgment, you become unshakable. When you stop craving its applause, you become dangerous. Not dangerous in cruelty, but in your refusal to be tamed. In your willingness to stand where others kneel, to speak when others stay silent, to create what others dare not imagine. The final revelation is this: You were never meant to belong. You were meant to transcend. The path is clear now. The silence is no longer your enemy, but your most sacred ally. The world will continue its endless chatter, its desperate dances for approval. But you will move differently, because you've heard the whisper beyond the noise, because you remember what you truly are. Now go and leave them wondering why you walk so unafraid in the solitude they still fear.